I am intentional.
I will plot and choose my course.
I will not wait to be blown from place to place.
I will do more than just react.
I will choose who I want to be and work to make that a reality.
I am wholehearted.
I will interact with the world from a place of worthiness, knowing my identity.
I will work to be able to feel, understand, and express my emotions.
I will allow my true self to be known.
I will leave my heart open to connect with others in a wholehearted way.
I am a man.
I have the responsibility to provide for my family, both temporally and spiritually.
I will use my special gifts to be able to make the world a better place.
I will protect and defend the vulnerable.
I will stand up when others sit down.
I will engage with others of like mind to strengthen and lift one another.
I am an intentionally wholehearted man. Welcome to this episode of the Intentionally Wholehearted Man. I first want to say thank you to those who have reached out and asked why it's been a while since I've put out an episode. Everything's good. There have been a lot of little things that have happened, quite a few sicknesses in the family, but they were just the colds that happen in life. We've also made a couple of trips, both for work and personal, and that has put things on the back burner that I've meant to do and just haven't been able to find time. Another thing that's happened as well is that I've had a little bit of that perfection with the next episode that I want to do. And that's made it hard to actually do it because I'm like, I want this to be exactly what I want it to be. And I'm having a hard time getting there. And that has locked me up a lot of times as I keep trying to go, I just have to get this just right before I can do it. And I'm working on that and trying to overcome some of that in my life. This episode, though, is going to be on something that's really been on my heart this last week. This is going to be on how do we show up as Christ in other people's lives, and how do people show up as Christ in our lives? Now, a few people may have felt that that sounded a little bit sacrilegious and perhaps sort of recoiled at that, but I would ask for a little bit of grace and a little bit of time to explain what I mean by that, because I think it will become very clear as we go through this episode that that is true, and that we need to think about that and recognize the people who show up in our lives, who lead us to Christ, who show up as Christ in our lives. And then we need to think about and focus on how we are able to show up as Christ in other people's lives. So, with that, this is something that has been on my heart the last week a lot. And I first started thinking about this subject a couple of years ago when one of the guys in my group mentioned that all of the other guys in our group had shown up as Christ in his life. And I admit, I sort of went, dude, that seems sort of wrong to say. Some of that had to do with my feeling very inadequate at the time, but also not understanding yet. He talked about how many people showed up with grace and taught him different parts of who he was and helped him to see who Christ was. So often we can't see the character of Christ because we don't see him. He's not here. But when others show Christ through their actions, we are able to connect better to that. And so this past week at church, a woman was giving a talk, and she told this story. A fellow was stuck on his rooftop in a flood. He was praying to God for help. He had great faith. He fully believed that God would help him. Soon a man in a rowboat came by, and the fellow shouted to the man on the roof, "Jump in, I can save you." The stranded fellow shouted back, "No, it's okay. I'm praying to God, and he's going to save me." So the rowboat went on. Then a motorboat came up. The water was getting deeper. The fellow in the motorboat shouted, "Jump in, I can save you." To this, the stranded man said, "No thanks. I'm praying to God, and he's going to save me. I have faith." So the motorboat went on. Then a helicopter came, and by this time, the water was up to his neck. The pilot shouted down, "Grab this rope. I will lift you to safety." To this, the stranded man again replied, "No thanks. I'm praying to God, and he is going to save me. I have faith." So the helicopter reluctantly flew away. Soon the water rose above his head, and the man drowned. He went to heaven. He finally got his chance to discuss this whole situation with God, at which point he exclaimed, "I had faith in you, but you didn't save me. You let me drown. I don't understand why." To this, God replied, "I sent you a rowboat, a motorboat, and a helicopter. What more did you expect?" How often in our lives are we needing help, wanting help, and not recognizing the people who God sends to give us that help? They're giving it in a different way than we think it's supposed to come. And so we turn away from it. I know through my journey, many times I had people who mentioned different things that, looking back, if I had been able to accept, if I had been able to connect with them and see that they were struggling with the same things I was, and I could have had support. But similar to the person on the roof, no, I have to do it on my own, or no, it needs to look like this for God to save me. Honestly, a lot of times I didn't think I was worth saving. God uses those who he has on the earth to save him. We are the Lord's hands here upon the earth, with the mandate to serve and lift his children. He is dependent upon each of us. He has no body here but ours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. We are the eyes through which he looks with compassion on this world. When we unite with him, we can do his work and change the world. So I want to talk about some of the people in my life who have shown up as Christ for me in my life. And these are just a few, but these are a few that were poignant in my life and really made a difference for me. As I have said in an earlier episode, we moved around a lot. And there were a lot of times I didn't really feel like any friends were permanent, or anybody was really, there was no permanence to anybody actually being there. And I remember when I was a little kid, I was about 13, and we lived in Florida, and an older one of the young men at church was having a birthday party. And I remember being invited to that as a 13-year-old, and it was his 16th birthday party. And just how important that made me feel to be invited. as the little kid to that birthday party and to be included and to be a part of that. And I'm sure for him, for all I know, his family could have said, "Hey, you need to invite him." But it made a huge impact on me, and it really helped me a lot. And then when we moved, I had a couple of church leaders who just really showed me a lot of compassion. One of them knew that I didn't feel comfortable. I'd just moved. I had a lot of different struggles with that move. And he just kept being a friend and let me stay in his class for years, way longer than I should have. But I felt safe with him. And he was a great person who taught me so many things. And he just taught me about serving and caring about others and how much he just cared about me and the other kids in his classes. Another one was the guy who gave me my first real job. He was my leader at church, and for years I watched him and saw a lot of things about what it meant to be a man of God, and spent many nights over at his and his wife's house, talking to them, listening to the struggles that they'd had, and trying to learn more about what life could look like. I had a couple of friends who, when I was really struggling with having any belief at all, kept me close to the church, kept me close enough to where God could actually reach out and touch me. My friend who challenged me to just pray one time and ask about going on a mission. The change that ended up making in my life, but him being willing to challenge, push me, and get me to actually pray about that, actually ask, was that the right thing, despite all of my objections. There have been many people at work throughout my life that have pushed me to be better, pushed me to try new things, and have then been there to support me, help me to learn and to grow. The men in my groups who have challenged me, who have had love and compassion when I was struggling, who have been there through the hard times, but have also shown me the path. To the men who are behind me on the path, who I've gotten to lead, who have continually pushed me to be better, to help me to continue to learn so that I can help more people. Another time when someone showed up as Christ in my life, and this was a very important one for me, especially as it comes to recovery. So I need to put a little bit of background into this. So a few months before, my wife had confronted me, and we were trying to figure out how things were going to go. My wife had said, "You need to figure out your crap, and otherwise don't come home." And I had finally made a commitment and had decided to join the program that I still work with to this day. And I had signed up for that. And a couple of days later, this man who he'd offered me a job about 6 years earlier, but due to some health issues for him, he hadn't talked to me in, at this point, 2 to 3 years. And all of a sudden, 2 days after signing up for the program, I get a call completely out of the blue from this man who I hadn't talked to in 2 to 3 years. And he asked me when I was going to be in town next. And I said, well, I'm coming home this weekend. And he said, good, we need to talk. He and I had a good discussion at that point. And I remember as soon as I got off that call with him, calling my wife and saying that I totally felt that this was a complete answer to our prayers. We had both hoped for something that would make it so that I could not be on the road so much, so that I could be home, and so that I didn't feel so isolated, so separated from everyone around me. And I have to say, if it hadn't been for me taking that job, there's no way I'd have made the changes that I've made in my life. And so I absolutely feel like that person, whether he knows it or not, was listening to those promptings. He was someone who God was able to use to make a difference in my life. Somebody who would recognize those promptings and be able to show up in a way that I needed at that point in my life. And that's a very, very important thing for me, that he was able to do that. And the last on this list, but by far the most important, is how my wife has shown up as Christ in my life. How she's had compassion for my struggles. How she's had love and grace as I've tried to be who I should have been for many years. That she's had far more belief in me than I did at many times. That she's seen who I could be, despite the fact that I wasn't living up to that at that time. My wife has absolutely shown so many Christ-like attributes to me. And I really just forget about that sometimes, and need to stop and recognize those people who have shown up and shown me Christ and helped me to be able to see and learn who he is more. So God wants us to show up for others in this same way. I wanted to start with a few times where I have failed in showing up. I'm sure there have been many, many more in my life, but these were a couple of times that really have stuck out. And they were very large things that I felt like I could see that God was trying to use me for something, and I didn't recognize it. So the first one I want to share is while I was on my mission, we visited a lot of people. And I remember there was this older man. He was probably in his 60s or 70s. He lived alone in a trailer, and we went by and visited him. he was a nice older man. You know, we talked to him, checked on how he was doing, you know, nothing that we could really do for him at that point, and we went on our way. So a couple of days later, I was thinking about what we should do that day, and this old man's name kept coming to mind, and I kept pushing it away. We just saw him a couple of days ago. You know, what is he gonna be help us with? He lived a ways away from our apartment. It wasn't around much of anything else we needed to do. And so I pushed it away for that reason. He's way over there. What else would we do over there? It didn't make sense. But throughout that day, that man's name kept coming to mind. And I kept pushing it away with all of these excuses. We just seen him a couple of days ago, all of those things. So we went on our day. And about 2 weeks later in church, this old man got up and he shared a story that, looking back, I knew was this day, and how some person had come by and seen him, how he was really in a bad mental place, and he just needed somebody to talk to. And I just kept having this thought of, I tried to get you to go, but you kept pushing it away. And so I had to find somebody else. And that one really hit me a lot. And I've tried to remember that when those names come to mind, don't push it away. React. And even if it doesn't seem like it makes any sense, take those opportunities when those names come to mind to reach out. We never know why that name came to mind. And there's often times where I've had a name come to mind, given them a call, and it seemed like nothing's come of it. But then later, sometimes weeks and months, somebody will say, "Do you remember that day when you called me?" Or just mention it as part of something else, that, yeah, somebody called me and I was really having a hard time that day. We are the ones who can show up for others here on earth, and Christ is trying to use us as his hands. Don't push away those thoughts, those impressions. Anytime that they come, we are being given an opportunity to touch the lives of someone else. So another one, I had seen one of those videos, one of those motivational, inspirational videos, where somebody in line was telling the story of the person at the front of the line at the gas station, counting out pennies, dimes, nickels, trying to get enough money to be able to put gas in their tank, and how everybody in line was waiting. And the person telling the story had said, you know, I was getting frustrated. Why is this person taking so long? All of those type of things. And then the person behind that person realized, hey, they need a little bit of help, and said, put an extra $5 on that pump. And by the time it got back to this person, they had like $40 to be able to fill up that person's tank. And I'd just seen that. And that morning, I was taking my daughter from her practice to work and then dropping her off. And I needed to do that before a group I was leading. And as I was driving her, I just kept thinking about that video I'd just seen and thinking about how cool that would be to be able to help somebody else. And as I was driving my daughter to her work, I looked down at the gas tank and going, "Ooh, wow. I thought I had a little bit more gas in this tank." And so I dropped her off and I was a little bit tight on time. I needed to get back to lead the group and I just kept focusing on, oh crap, I'm in a hurry. I have to get this done. And, I'm trying to pump gas real quick so that I am not late. And as I'm doing that, a guy comes up and asks, "Hey, do you have a couple of dollars you can spare?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry right now." And he started to walk away. And I can't remember what happened exactly, but something happened to make me go, I think this guy actually needs help. It's not just a panhandler. And I called him back over and I opened up my wallet and I had a 20 and a 5 in my wallet. And I ended up handing him the $5 bill. And he was very thankful and walked off. And I finished filling up my gas tank and put my cap on. And as I was pulling out of the gas station, I had this overwhelming thought of, and I actually, sorry, I'd also seen him, continuing to look for help. And as I was driving out of that parking lot, I had this overwhelming thought of, I was trying to prepare you. You could have done more. And just had that feeling of, wow, I could have done more. But I let my own selfishness at that time and just the frustration and overwhelm get to me to the point of I wasn't who I could have been. So often we let ourselves get overwhelmed, hurried, focused on ourselves. We forget to listen. We justify and think that these are our own thoughts. And so many of these things are what keep us from being able to truly be God's hands and show up as Christ in other people's lives. So now I want to share some things that I have learned through some of the experiences I've had as I have actually gotten it semi-right. You'll see that in some of these experiences. Some I got it right. Some, there were more rebukes, but I learned a lot through them. I'm sure there have been so many more, but these are a couple of the things that really have stuck out and really have shown me who God is and how much he cares about his children. So one of the first ones I want to share, I had a group meeting, and after group I had scheduled to go give blood. That's something I do a lot, is I give blood. And in this meeting, there was a guy who seemed to really just be struggling. He was really having a hard day. And so I stayed after and kept working with him, really trying to help him, and ended up helping him out and getting him in a good place. But I remember I was leaving, and as I was pulling out of the neighborhood, I was frustrated. I was, and anxious because I was late to give blood. I was going to be 15, 20 minutes late for this appointment to give blood. And I was frustrated with myself and going, man, why couldn't I have gotten that done faster? I should have just gotten off so I could get there. And as I'm waiting at the stop sign, I just got this amazing feeling of he was the one. He was the one that you could touch today. And he was that person that God had put in my path that day. How often do we push past the one that we could help because we're in a hurry? And I try to focus on that so often of who is the one that you've put in my path today. I don't need to worry about the 99. I just need to worry about the one who you've put in my path, who I can help. Another experience was I was having a lot of frustration and struggles with some of the things going on in the world, and was very overwhelmed and just sort of in a funk because of how things were going at that point. And I was really praying. And in the mornings, I do my morning prayer sitting in the parking lot of the gym most of the time. And I was just really pouring my heart out to the Lord about what's going on, what do I need to do, how is this going to work out, those type of things. And I remember finishing that prayer, and I ended up seeing an inspirational quote, and I saw this, and immediately the thought came of, you need to share it with this group. And I pushed that away and was like, no, that's crazy. And I scrolled through a few more things before going into the gym, and I just kept having this thought of, you need to share this with this group. And I kept pushing it away, trying to push it away. It kept coming back. So I said, okay, fine, and shared it, and then got out of my car right after I shared it. And as I was walking to the front doors of the gym, and this day I had just parked across a little driveway and then like 3 parking spots out. So it didn't take long. And this is at like 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. So I didn't even expect anybody in the group to even be up. Before I opened the door of the gym, I got a response from somebody in that group that said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed today. When I read that, I immediately had this thought of, I am in charge. I just need you to do the next right thing. I just need you to follow those promptings when they come and to do the next right thing. Gotta say that workout was very awkward because all I kept doing was just crying, because it just kept coming back, this, I am in charge. I just need you to do the next right thing. And how often do we pass up that next right thing because it doesn't seem right? It doesn't seem like something I want to do right now. So the next one was, I was trying to help a guy. He was a very frustrating person, a very negative person. And there were a group of us who were really trying to support him, really trying to help him to navigate the things he was going through. But it was just a pity poor me victim type of place that he was in. And I was really frustrated. I'm like, forget it. He's not even worth my time because I just get frustrated after calling, trying to help. None of it's working, and I was very down about it. And so again, was sitting in the gym thinking about it and thinking about talking to him. And the thought that came was sometimes the ones who are the hardest to love need our love the most. Wow, that really sucks. But it's so true. Sometimes when we're struggling in life, sometimes when we can't even seem to get our heads above water and nothing feels right, that's when we need God's love the most. And for those of us who are willing to try to be his hands, sometimes the ones who are the hardest to love are the ones that need our love the most. So take the time and be willing to go through the hard things. Christ regularly sat with those who are hard to love. That's some of the things the Pharisees gave him a hard time about, was who he hung out with. We can do the hard things. We can love those who are hard to love. So another one, through the years, I've set up a lot of different groups, volleyball groups, reading group, different things like that. But it always got frustrating to me, especially like with the volleyball group, where if I was out of town, it didn't happen. And everybody'd be like, man, when are you going to be back so we can do it again? And I'm like, all I did was say, hey, I'm doing it this day. And I had a time where I got frustrated because it felt like, why can't anybody else do this? Why is it if I don't show up that it's not going to happen? And as I was thinking about that and frustrated and going, why can't other people do what they need to do? And they're super excited about it, but can't follow through on it. And as I was thinking about that, I got the answer. This is a gift I've given you. Why do you resent your gift? Wow, that hit hard. How often do we resent the gifts that we've been given? Our enemy constantly tries to step in. He's that voice that says, oh no, it doesn't matter. You should get frustrated with other people, and tries to step in and get us not to show up as Christ. And so through that, I learned that I need to not resent my gifts. There are certain things I'm good at, and to not be frustrated when others aren't. So as I mentioned earlier, so many times I have had where a name has come to mind and I have reached out. I've learned to recognize when a name that seems out of nowhere comes up, that I need to do something, whether it's call them, text them, go by, that I need to do something. And I've gotten far better at that. And I've had a lot of opportunities where somebody said, oh my gosh, this is just what I needed today. But other times, I haven't known why their name ever came to mind. There's a lot of times where I can start to second guess that, well, what was that even about? That isn't for me to know right now. My job is to follow through on those thoughts that come to mind, follow through on those good intentions and reach out. And the thing that I've learned through those is I'm allowed to be part of God's work. I have been entrusted with a name at that moment, and he is allowing me to be his hands. He is allowing me to be part of his work, to do something tangible for somebody else. It helps me to know that I'm loved, but it really helps me to see how much he loves my brothers and sisters. Another one that goes along with this is I've had a couple of experiences where I've been thinking about something I'm working on, or thinking about people from my group, or thinking about somebody else's struggles, and, thinking about how I could help. And there have been a couple of times where I've just had this overwhelming feeling of how much God truly loves them, how important they are to him. And man, I gotta say, these things have got to stop happening at the gym all the time, because I can only imagine as I'm sitting there crying, bawling, because I feel that love, how much that must look weird as I'm working out at the gym. But it's happened many times, and I thank God for it. So this whole episode has been just about me talking about how we need to recognize the people who show up as Christ in our lives, the people who show us the way, the people who give us love, compassion, grace, and sometimes a swift kick in the butt, to set us back on the path. But it's that loving kick in the butt from people who know who we are and what we can be, and want to see the best for us. But then also, how can we show up in a Christ-like way for others in our lives? In the scriptures, it talks about us becoming like Christ. As we serve and show up for others as he would, we become more like him. Others are able to see his image in our countenance, and we can become more like him. I want to finish with one last thing that I'd heard about, and it was a person who was went to a silversmith and was watching him purify silver. And they were asking him, how do you know when it's pure? And he said he's able to look into the silver and see his own reflection. That purifying process is very hard, and we are each going through it. And God is there. He's purifying us, and he keeps looking at looking to see if he can see his reflection in us. Let us be able to show up and be able to reflect his love to all those around us. Thank you for listening, and I will try to be better about posting more often. I hope this message has helped somebody. It's what's been on my heart for the last week, and I absolutely had to get this out. Thank you so much for listening, and share with anybody who you think it might help.